Tom Brady has announced that he is returning for a 23rd NFL season and will once again play quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In the words of number 12, let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bucs Nation, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. We thank you for making us your first listen or view every day. I am James Yarko, flying solo on this episode. Shout out to my co-host David Harrison for holding it down while I was out of town. You can check out everything that I am doing over at BucsNation.com. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarko_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. Again, thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have their answer at the quarterback position, and it has absolutely nothing to do with free agency or the hot and heavy trade market. It's the GOAT. Tom Brady is back. Tom Brady announced on his Twitter page that he wasn't ready to sit in the stands yet and that he would return as the quarterback of the Buccaneers just one day before the start of the open negotiating window for free agency. And Tom Brady said, "These past 2 months, I've realized my place is still on the field and not in the stands. That time will come, but it's not now. I love my teammates and I love my supportive family. They make it all possible. I'm coming back for my 23rd season in Tampa. Unfinished business, LFG." And you all know exactly what LFG means when Brady puts it in his Twitter account. This is huge news for the Bucs. They no longer have to look for a trade for a DeShaun Watson or a Derek Carr, or as was rumored over the weekend, and I about fell out of my chair at the restaurant when I saw it, Baker Mayfield, who, if he had become available, apparently the Bucs had done some homework on him as well. Instead, they get Tom Brady back. They are going to keep all of their upcoming draft capital, and they are most certainly going to need that, given that they will be losing some players in free agency. At this point, it is an inevitability. The question is, what players will that be that end up going to other teams? We're going to get to that in just a little bit. But having Tom Brady back for the Buccaneers, again, puts them right back in the conversation for Super Bowl contender. It was 40 days that Tom Brady was retired, but the paperwork was never filed. He never, officially retired from the NFL. And so there's been speculation. Rich Eisen has talked about it. Ian Rappaport has talked about it. Adam Schefter has talked about it. And of course, all of the local Tampa media, Greg Allman, Rick Straub, those guys have been mentioning that maybe Brady isn't truly done. And there was speculation that maybe he wants to come back and play another year in San Francisco and play for his hometown team. Jason Light at the NFL Scouting Combine said, "You always leave the light on for a guy like Tom Brady." There were a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation that maybe Brady and Bruce Arians' relationship wasn't so great, and that Brady retired because he didn't appreciate the way the Bruce Arians did things, or he didn't like the way things happened. And we had that whole thread about the red pen, and Brady and Leftwich would work out the offensive game plan, and then Bruce Arians would come in with his red pen and scratch everything out. Obviously, none of that is actually true, or Tom Brady wouldn't be back and definitively stating in his tweet that he is back in Tampa with unfinished business. Obviously, Buccaneers players were excited on Twitter. Mike Evans tweets out LFG. Chris Godwin retweets Brady with the sunglasses and smiling emoji. Players are hyped. They are excited because Tom Brady is back. And look, You know that he's going to be 45 when the season begins, but he is thrown for 40 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons. He is not washed. He is not tired. He is still at the top of his game and an elite quarterback in the NFL. The Buccaneers, even with the pending free agents, have a young and extremely talented core of players that are still championship contenders. They still have holes to fill. We understand that. There's still issues at the tight end position. There's still issues at the running back position. They still need to add a receiver, whether that's in draft or in free agency. They have a pending free agent at corner. They have a pending free agent at safety. All of that is still true. Tom Brady coming back by himself does not fix those things in and of themselves. But Tom Brady coming back gives the Buccaneers another opportunity to go all in. It gives them another opportunity to justify kicking the can down the road, putting off some money to put together the best 53-man roster that they possibly can, because they know the stability and the high level of play and the high level of intelligence and the expectation of excellence that is going to be under center for their football team. The Buccaneers were really, really close to pulling off an amazing upset against the Los Angeles Rams in the divisional round, and they were doing so without Chris Godwin and without Tristan Wirfs and without Antonio Brown. You start to put together that level of roster again, and the Buccaneers are right back in the conversation for championship contention. There's another champion that I'm going to talk about in just a little bit, and we're going to discuss how this decision and how this announcement is going to affect free agency. But first, we have to talk about our friends over at Built Bar, especially now that we know that you guys need to try these Built Puffs. If you haven't tried them yet, you are the one that is missing out on one of the best tasting Built Bars out there. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they are a treat. And like the OG Built Bars, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are going to be a favorite of anyone that tries them. There's churro, there's coconut marshmallow, there's banana cream pie. Banana cream pie is actually my favorite of the Puffs. It is outstanding. They are going to be your new favorite as well. Built Bars are low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bar with a Built Bar, and you're going to save yourself tons of calories and not sacrifice any of the taste. Most of these Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. At Built Bar, they are all about taste. They make it taste delicious first, then they figure out how to make it healthy. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Segment 2 here of the Locked On Bucs podcast, and thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL, Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It is also free and available on all platforms. Now, what's going to happen this week? Are the Buccaneers still going to end up with a ton of roster holes to fill? It's a distinct possibility. Look, the open negotiating window or legal tampering, I hate that phrase because if it's tampering, it's not legal. I prefer open negotiating window. It starts on Monday. These free agents can begin to speak with other teams. Teams are going to be making phone calls to agents and players and in trying to get a feel for who they can reel in, especially from a championship team from just 2 years ago. And the Buccaneers have plenty of marquee free agents coming up. Ryan Jensen is a guy that is going to be a hot commodity. He could end up one of the top 3 highest paid centers in the NFL. You have Alex Kappa. You have cornerback Carlton Davis, who's projected to be the second highest paid corner in the free agent market. Leonard Fournette, who already said his goodbye to the Buccaneers fans in an Instagram post that I talked about last week. Could he change his mind? Could he decide, you know what? I want to come back. I want to run it back one more time with Tom Brady and be the lead dog there and be there for my guy, Tom. And of course, you have Rob Gronkowski. So, with this news of Tom Brady's return, what is going to happen with these guys? I think it's a pretty safe assumption that Rob Gronkowski will be back. The Buccaneers have an obvious need at tight end with just Cameron Brate there. I think OJ Howard is still going to end up moving on, getting an opportunity with another team to live up to that potential that the Buccaneers saw when they made him a first round pick. But Gronk, if he wants to play, I find it hard to believe that he would want to play somewhere while Tom Brady is still in the NFL. He's going to want to team up with his guy and play with him one more time, especially knowing that this very well could be Tom Brady's last season. We all kind of believed that this year was going to be Brady's last season. Then he retires. Now he's decided he's not done yet. So I would imagine that they're going to figure out a way to get Gronk back in the building. But is Ryan Jensen going to be the kind of player that says, you know what? I will take a little bit less money and come back to Tampa because Jensen could make some serious, serious money in places like Cincinnati or Pittsburgh or Cleveland. Yeah, there are a lot of teams interested in the services of Ryan Jensen, but is he going to want to continue to be the guy in the middle protecting Tom Brady? Is Brady going to get on the phone with Jensen and say, look, dude, I need you. I'm coming back. You know that I'm coming back. I need you to anchor this offensive line. I need you there, especially with Ali Marpet gone. Then again, Ali Marpet might announce that he's coming back too, since Tom Brady did. Just saying. Then again, he also posted on Instagram a handwritten letter that says, I am officially retiring as of, and then whatever the date was. But that's going to be something that's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. Jensen is still one of the Buccaneers' top priorities in free agency, but you kind of thought that maybe his services were going to get a little bit pricey for what the Buccaneers were going to be able to afford. Now, is he willing to take that discount in order to come back and play with Tom? I think Alex Kappa returns. I think of the list of free agents that the Buccaneers are seriously going to have to look into, filling that position as far as the starters or the marquee players are concerned, is still going to be Carlton Davis. I don't think Carlton Davis is going to be in a position where he opts to take less money to stay in Tampa because of Tom Brady when he has an opportunity to really get broken off and be one of the highest paid corners in the National Football League. The Buccaneers could then look to the cornerback position in free agency. They can look to the cornerback position in the draft. And you still have the hole that Antonio Brown left that needs to be filled. We're not talking about, we've mentioned obviously that the Buccaneers need a wide receiver, but we go through and we talk about these roster holes that could be left by pending free agents. And we never bring up the receiver position because it's kind of been put out of our minds that Antonio Brown is a quote unquote pending free agent. He's just a guy that danced off the field shirtless and we kind of forgot about him. So are the Buccaneers going to be in a situation where they get Brady another weapon in the first round with a guy like, you all know that I love, Olave? Could it be Dotson out of Penn State? Is it going to be one of those guys? Or is that where they're going to look to replace Ali Marpet with a Zion Johnson or somebody of that caliber? We're not really sure yet. A lot of these questions are going to be answered here in the next couple of days when the open negotiating window starts. And then, of course, the start of free agency on Wednesday at 4:00 when the new league year begins. And you see all of these agreed upon moves already, they become official. Russell Wilson officially traded to the Denver Broncos. Carson Wentz officially traded to the Washington Commanders. So the free agent situation for the Buccaneers now is not nearly as dire, I guess, for lack of a better term, as it felt like it was going to be. We have seen for the better part of a decade, guys take discounts and less money on shorter deals to play with Tom Brady for an opportunity to win a championship. And I was speaking with a friend of mine right before we started recording, and he was saying that, he doesn't think that the Buccaneers are going to be getting these guys at a discount because they're not a championship contending team. They're going to lose all these guys, and they got ransacked by the Rams until the Rams, quote unquote, started giving the game away. Well, the defense was making plays. Let's not discount that at all. And we'll find out. We'll find out if Leonard Fournette wants to sign another 1-year deal to come in and play with Brady and Evans and Godwin and Gronk. We'll see if Jensen is going to re-up to protect his guy, number 12. All of this is going to play out, but it's going to be hot and heavy and move very quickly at the beginning of this week. Coming up in just a moment, we are going to talk about how the NFC South is not exactly something that is in the bag for the Buccaneers, even with Tom Brady's return. But the Buccaneers Super Bowl odds, the moment that Tom Brady announced he was returning, shot all the way up back into the top 3 of odds makers for the Super Bowl champion favorite. And of course, we are going to give a shout out to our friends over at BetOnline. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. March Madness. Is there anything better? From the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this year. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Wrapping things up here on a Brady's Back edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarko flying solo on this episode, but make sure you check out everything that my co-host David Harrison and I are doing over on Twitter at @JYarko_Bucs, at DHarrison82. And I know this is a little bit shorter of an episode. Look, I was in the house for all of about 10 minutes after a 4-hour drive home from my son's hockey tournament in South Bend, Indiana, where my son won the Irish Cup tournament with his Miami Junior Redhawks on Notre Dame's ice there at the Compton Ice Arena. Gold medals. It was all I could do to keep from crying. And I had told David ahead of time. That's why I wasn't around on Friday's episode, was because we had to leave and head up to Notre Dame. And so David knew that I wasn't available to record tonight. And then David was a little bit under the weather. Then this news popped up. I mean, I was barely in the house and this happens. And my son says, I won a gold medal in a tournament and Tom Brady is coming back to the Buccaneers. This is the best day ever. So I am here flying solo, a little bit shorter of an episode, but shout out to David for holding down the fort. And shout out to David. David, you were right. I was wrong. You were pretty steadfast in maintaining that you thought there was a chance that Tom Brady was coming back. I was very clear in the fact that I said that Brady's time was done and we need to give it up. You were right. I was wrong. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and again. No, I'm kidding, David. You're right. Yeah, I'd say we split about 50-50 on our disagreements. Is that fair? I don't know. You longtime listeners can let us know if David and I are pretty even on our disagreements as to who's right and who's wrong. But the NFC South is something now that Buccaneers fans are going to turn their attention to. They are the defending NFC South champions, but the NFC South is far from a sure thing now, because as news developed over the weekend with the DeShaun Watson case, no criminal charges being filed, all of a sudden, everybody was in on DeShaun Watson. They were talking about the Browns being a wild card, and if Baker Mayfield became available, the Bucs were doing their homework. Well, it came out that the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers both essentially have offers on the table for DeShaun Watson, and they're working with the Houston Texans to orchestrate a visit ahead of any trade, because DeShaun Watson in order for a trade to happen, has to waive his no trade clause. So DeShaun Watson wants the opportunity to meet with some of these teams before he waives his no trade clause. Obviously, the teams want to have an opportunity to sit down with DeShaun Watson, talk about on and off the field issues, I'm sure. So if DeShaun lands with the New Orleans Saints or the Carolina Panthers, the NFC South is immediately becomes a much more interesting division. The Carolina Panthers with Sam Darnold are not scary at all, not even a little bit. But they have a lot of offensive playmakers, especially if they hang on to Christian McCaffrey. I would imagine if they land DeShaun Watson, Christian McCaffrey is not going anywhere. They have some really talented receivers there. They have a pretty solid defense. So DeShaun Watson going there, all of a sudden the Panthers are a playoff caliber team right out of the gate. If he goes to the New Orleans Saints, of course, coming off of a year where they had one of the best defenses in the National Football League. You have Michael Thomas returning. You do have questions about what is going to happen with Alvin Kamara in his legal situation in Vegas for I can't remember if it was officially an assault charge or what it was, but he punched some dude in the face and got arrested for it after the Pro Bowl. So, you have some questions there, but the New Orleans Saints have some playmakers on their team as well. They always find a way to circumvent the cap, and they find a way to create cap space and some very tricky maneuvering. They're very good at it. They continue to kick the can down the road. It never, ever, ever catches up with them. So DeShaun Watson to the New Orleans Saints immediately makes them a playoff contending team, potentially a championship contending team, depending on what they do with the rest of free agency and the draft. So just because Tom Brady is back and everybody's excited about it, I'm excited about it. I know our listeners and our viewers are excited about it. That doesn't mean that they are the odds on hands down favorites for the NFC South. Everyone still has to turn an eye to the DeShaun Watson situation to see how that plays out, because that can now have a major effect on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the rest of the division. So I get the feeling that we're going to have some pretty solid DeShaun Watson information coming within the next week. Maybe if a lot of these teams start to allow almost free agent style visits, or if the Texans allow it, I mean, with some of these other interested teams, this can, take a little bit longer than normal. I'm sure DeShaun Watson has an idea in his head of some teams that he wouldn't really have to meet in order to waive his no trade clause. The Saints, my guess, would be one of those, but maybe teams are going to want to meet with him. And of course, there are questions surrounding the leadership as far as the coaching in the front office there in Carolina. That, that's the situation that DeShaun asked to be traded out of last year before all of the allegations came out. So just because Brady is back doesn't mean you turn your attention away from the DeShaun Watson sweepstakes. It can have a huge ripple effect through the NFC and especially the NFC South. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, but David and I will be back tomorrow to talk more about this situation. And of course, with the open negotiating window opening up on Monday, we will have plenty to talk about on that front. I want to thank you again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or view of the day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects as well as NFL front offices. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I know for a fact we are going to have people that want to say something about the return of Tom Brady. So go ahead and give us a call and leave us a voicemail at 813-444-5841 or send us an email to lockedonbucspodcast@gmail.com. For David Harrison, I am James Yarko. Until we speak again, make sure that you're checking out everything that I'm doing over at bucksnation.com. And you can follow along on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarko_Bucks, and follow David at DHarrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, be good to one another, fire those cannons, LFG. And we thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.